In this video, we'll take a look at how guided setup experience would help IT admins to get started with digital end user experience product. So Ken Rush is an IT admin who's responsible to adopt any ServiceNow capabilities. As part of his responsibility, he was asked to evaluate DEX and to set it up for the entire organization. Now, while conducting the initial evaluation, he finds that the setup information is scattered all over the place, which increases the time that it takes for him to get started with DEX. So with instructional guided setup experience, Ken would now have all the instructions that he needs to set up agent client collector agents on Windows and macOS devices. He would also have all the instruction that is needed to enable browser extensions on Chrome and Edge. He would have guided experience to deploy desktop assistant on all of the devices. And finally, he would also have guided setup experience to configure DEX Self-service. Now let's take a look at a quick demo. Once Ken logs in and lands into DEX Administrator tab, he would be able to now follow guided setup experience to get started with different digital end user experience components. So as part of device and application configuration, Ken would now be able to follow guided setup experience to deploy agents on Windows devices. He would also be able to deploy agents on macOS devices. He would be able to enable browser extensions on Chrome and Edge. He would be able to deploy desktop assistant on individual devices and also configure digital end user experience self-service configuration. So let's take a look at these guided setup experience in a bit more detail. So once Ken clicks on deploy, he would be able to navigate to the individual guided setup experience for each of the components that he needs to deploy and get started with. So once he chooses to get started with ACC deployment on Windows device, he would be able to see all the tasks and instruction that he needs to follow to get started with and deploy ACC agent on all the Windows devices. He would have instructions on how to generate a registration key, downloading the ACC agent file for single device, deploying the ACC agent on a single device, configuring proxy, and also how to deploy it in bulk. Ken would also be given a step of how to verify if the ACC agent is successfully installed on any device. Similarly, Ken would also have instructions for Mac OS devices, where he would be able to follow the step-by-step instruction to deploy agents on Mac OS devices. Similar to Windows devices, here he would have instructions on how to generate the agent registration key, deploying it on single device, making changes to ACC agent file, and then also deploying it in bulk for multiple devices. The next guided setup experience is for deploying DEX browser extension on Chrome and Edge, where Ken would be able to follow the steps to deploy DEX browser extension for Chrome and Edge for single and multiple devices. The next guided setup experience that Ken would have handy is around setting up and deploying DEX desktop assistant on devices. So Ken would be able to follow the instructions to set up and deploy DEX desktop assistant on single Windows device or macOS device. Also, he would have instruction on how he could implement DEX desktop assistant on multiple devices, be it Windows or macOS. He would also have step on how to enable virtual agent conversation on DEX Desktop Assistant. Finally, he would have the instructions to configure DEX Self-service by following the instructions provided as part of this guided setup experience. With instructional guided setup experience, Ken was able to get started with different components of DEX.